Hi everyone and welcome. So today we are going to talk about finding the main ideas and key points in a text. And I love this picture here, even though it's kind of covered up a little bit, but identifying the topic, summarizing, checking the first and last sentences, looking for repetition. These are pretty good points. But if you've been asked to do this, to find the key points or the main ideas, there are some other tips that I have for you. So let's get started. What we're going to look at first are what main ideas are. Then we're going to talk about how to determine the topic. We're going to look at asking questions before reading, looking for clues in the introduction, looking for clues in body paragraphs, looking for clues in the conclusion, and understanding implied main ideas. Those are main ideas that aren't stated directly. And lastly, testing your own understanding to kind of make sure that you got this right. I wanted to create this presentation because what I found on YouTube and some other educational sites is that a lot of times the presentations about finding main ideas just focus on a paragraph rather than how to find things in an essay. So although our examples are going to be paragraphs, because I'm not going to sit here and read an essay to you, we are going to look at all the parts of an essay or all of the parts of an article to look at each individual part and how to find main ideas in those parts. So let's get started. What are main ideas? The author's overall main idea is sometimes called the thesis, and other times it's called the claim. So those are two words to know. This can be a particular point of view the author has on a topic. It can be something that the author wants readers to think, believe, or understand. Or it can be something the author wants the reader to do or to take action on. Often, this claim is supported by smaller main ideas throughout the article or essay. So what they have is a claim, and then they have, in another presentation, I talk about how to write your own claim and how to support it with reasons. But every claim typically will have reasons or examples or details to support it. And that's basically what a main idea is. So here's a claim. People should grow their own food. That's the overall argument, what the author wants people to do. Main idea 1, a garden can save you money at the grocery store. So in this essay, I would expect that there would be a paragraph, maybe 2, about how I could save money at the grocery store by growing my own food. Main idea 2, you can be healthier by eating your own local organic produce. So again, I would expect that that whole paragraph is going to kind of focus on that idea. And it might even be 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs that have that idea in it. But they're all connected to the topic. And the topic would be gardening or growing your own food. How do you determine the topic in other ways? Well, a topic is another word for subject. You can read the title, the subtitle, and any captions under the images to kind of figure out what the topic is. What's the subject the author is writing on? From there, you can then ask, what's their claim about this topic, or what's their point of view? Another way to find the topic is to skim through the first few paragraphs. You don't have to read them word for word, but just kind of figure out what's this going to be about. Look for keywords or phrases. And ask yourself, what is this text about? You don't need to know yet what the author's purpose, claim, or main points are. You're just trying to figure out what they're writing about, the general subject of the piece. And then write the topic in a single word or phrase. That's my recommendation. So here, this is from an essay called Some Lessons from the Assembly Line by Andrew Broxma. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you can see here in yellow. Lessons from the assembly line, automatic welders. I thought about how different my life had been a few weeks earlier. My last exam of spring semester at college. So we have a description about a factory. We have the title that says assembly line. There are lessons that he's learning about that assembly line. And he was just in college during the spring, and now it's the summer. I should have highlighted June as well. So I'm going to guess just from this first paragraph that this topic here, I'll put it in a phrase and I'll say working in a factory. Possibly because he mentions college, differences between working in a factory and going to college. That's basically how you would determine the topic, just the general subject. Then I kind of recommend that people ask themselves some questions before reading. You don't have to do this in a formal way by writing them down, but if you're looking at a really difficult article or a chapter of your textbook that's really hard, it can help to write some questions down. What do you already know about the topic? What might I learn from this reading? Why did the author decide to write about this? This kind of indicates their purpose, which we talk about in a different presentation. But what is their purpose for writing? Why are they writing? What might their claim be? What might my professor want me to learn or consider from reading this? What would I like to learn or discover from reading this? And then you can also look at the questions at the end of the article or chapter if they've been provided. So if you're looking at a textbook, you can think about some of these questions. What am I going to need to know for a test is another question I didn't put on here. A lot of times your instructor might take the questions from the end of the chapter and use them in a test or a quiz. So that's always a nice place to look. And also looking at the questions at the end can give you a good idea of what you need to look for in terms of the main ideas of the reading before you actually read it. So looking for clues as to main ideas in the introduction. Authors often state their claim in the introduction, either in the first or last sentence of the first paragraph. So they might have that overall argument or thesis statement right off the bat, or they might have it at the end of their first paragraph after they've kind of given a hook to draw the reader in, like a quote or a description. In a persuasive essay or an argumentative article, often writers open with a thesis containing that overall main idea. If the author doesn't have that sentence stating their point of view, look at the example or description to kind of at least determine the topic, even if you can't yet figure out the main idea. And then consider the main idea of that first paragraph. So here is an example. The Dangers of Social Media Addiction, that's the title, by Julia Steinberg and Aretha Parabwa. And I highlighted here, the more teens use social media, the more addicted they become. So that's the claim of this article. You can see the topic right in the title, The Dangers of Social Media Addiction. Or if you want to even shorten that up, social media. That's the topic of the editorial. The author's claim is that when teens use social media more, they become addicted, and that means that they can be harmed. And then I would expect that the rest of this editorial is spent talking about how teens are addicted to social media, maybe the research that shows that there are harmful effects, what those harmful effects look like, and maybe something about how to get help. That's what I would guess is going to happen. Those are the questions I would ask. Do they have research? Are they going to talk about some of these effects? Yeah. So here's an example without a clear thesis. That's David Sedaris, and this is Me Talk Pretty One Day. It's from his book of the same name. Welcome to French class. At the age of 41, I am returning to school, and I've also highlighted here a true debutante, and I was issued a student ID. So I don't know necessarily just from this paragraph, and this was underneath the title, so a little bit of a hook or description to draw in the reader, maybe even a subtitle. I don't know from this paragraph what his claim or what his point of view will be, but I can tell the topic, and I will say that the main idea in this paragraph is also pretty evident. So the topic will be his experiences in French class, and his main idea here is that as an adult, he went back to school and he became a student. And that's sort of the main idea here. And then he has some kind of humorous details and description to draw the reader in and make them interested, make them want to keep reading. But this is a good example of, I can't tell the thesis or the claim, but at least I can tell one of his main ideas. So how do we find main ideas in body paragraphs? A lot of times main ideas are found at the beginning of these paragraphs. Not always, but many times an author will have a topic sentence. And if you are in my class, you're going to be learning about how to write topic sentences or how to write a paragraph that includes a topic sentence at any rate. At the beginning of the paragraph, a topic sentence kind of is the controlling idea which shows or explains the subject discussed in the passage. Sometimes this topic sentence will be at the end, but a lot of times it'll be at the beginning. Main ideas can also be found in the concluding sentences of the paragraph. Sometimes an author will have transition in the final sentence, but other times they'll have a concluding sentence which basically sums up or wraps up the information, and then they'll link to the next paragraph in their essay. So this is again from lessons from the assembly line. As frustrating as the work can be, the most stressful thing about blue-collar life is knowing your job could disappear overnight. And then I highlighted some details here. He talks about downsizing, overseas relocation, a factory that could be shut down in 6 months. So that's the main idea. The main idea is the stress of this type of work because the jobs could just go away. There's no job security. So I'll put it that way. The main idea here is a lack of job security. And the proof or evidence or details he gives for that main idea would be downsizing, overseas relocation, and factories shutting down. So he's got 3 details that add to that main idea of a lack of job security. And a lot of times this is how paragraphs will be structured. They'll have this topic sentence, and then they'll have details kind of going into explaining or supporting the idea in the topic sentence. So you can always look for that structure. It's not going to happen all the time, but it will happen a lot of the time. So how do we look for clues to the main idea in a conclusion? To me, this is a little bit easier than the body paragraphs or the introduction, because a lot of times an essay will start with a claim, they'll use body paragraphs to support that claim, and then they will have kind of a summary of all their ideas in the conclusion. So it kind of leads like claim, main ideas, and conclusion. Other essays might begin with a narrative, the way we saw with David Sedaris. It'll draw the reader in, and then they'll use the body paragraphs to kind of imply their claim, which is then stated in the conclusion. So here you'd have introduction, main ideas, and then the claim in the conclusion. In either case, it's a little bit easier to see those main ideas in the conclusion sometimes. Some essays also use a conclusion that summarizes all of the author's main ideas or key points, so you can look for that as well. Now, you will have essays in certain situations that just kind of finish a story and don't have the typical type of conclusion that you're looking for. And if that's the case, the next point that I have about finding implied main ideas could also help you. But yeah, definitely if you're having problems finding main ideas, reread the conclusion and see if you can find the main ideas or the claim in that section. So let's look at an example. Here's a conclusion. I didn't put the whole thing because it's quite long, but this is by Amy Tan and it's called Mother Tongue. I began to write stories using all the Englishes I knew, and I'm just going to look at the highlights here. The English I spoke with my mother, simple. The English she spoke with me, broken. What I imagined to be her translation of her Chinese if she could speak perfect English, her internal language. I sought to preserve the essence, capture what language ability tests could not reveal. Apart from what any critic had to say about my writing, I knew I succeeded. So in this conclusion, she's going over a lot of the ideas that she's just talked about in this essay. The type of English she uses when she speaks with her mom, the type of English her mother uses, how her mother reads, how she reads, what critics think, and how to capture language the way it's actually used by people, not just the way it looks in a textbook or on a test, right? So you can see a lot of those main ideas in this paragraph. It does not have a very clearly stated claim, but it comes pretty close, I think, this part here about what any critic has to say about her writing and capturing the language with intent, passion, imagery, and rhythms. But this is a great example of a summation of all of the author's points up until the conclusion in this final paragraph or 2 paragraphs of an essay. When you have these implied main ideas, it means that the main idea is not clearly stated. So it's up to you to kind of figure out what the author is trying to say. Some paragraphs could imply a main idea by introducing facts or describing a situation without addressing the topic directly. Others may have an example that hints at or clues in the reader about how the author feels about a situation. Look also for repeated words and phrases. And look at the transition words an author uses. A word like therefore shows a conclusion. A word like however shows exception. So again, this is Mother Tongue from Amy Tan, a different little section of it. She's getting on the phone to speak for her mother to someone who has not paid her mother. So this is her mother in the background saying, "So mad he lied to me, losing me money." Then I said in perfect English on the phone, "Yes, I'm getting rather concerned." So the main idea isn't stated here the way it is in her conclusion, but you can kind of get the sense from the implied, what she's implying is that her mother is an intelligent woman who knows exactly what's going on, that this person is trying to rip her off, and she wants to express her passion that she's mad. In contrast, she knows that it might not be accepted by the person she's talking to. So her daughter Amy is using this perfect English. So the main idea would basically be, possibly you could say, the cultural differences in using language, or you could say the language differences between someone who's immigrated to the United States and someone who's the daughter or the son of someone who's immigrated. Or you could just say language differences if you kind of want to just look at the topic. But there's a lot of different ways you could interpret this passage. But seeing this main idea here of the differences, the way Amy talks versus the way her mother talks, which is again reinforced in that conclusion that we looked at. Testing your understanding is the last step. After you find the topic and main ideas, jot them down, then write a sentence that you think summarizes the author's claim once you can see all those main ideas. Look back at the main ideas you identified. Do all those main ideas point to supporting the author's claim? If they don't, you might want to reword the claim, or you might want to recheck to see if the main ideas are correct, or if the article has maybe some more main ideas or key points that you missed. Okay, so let's review. You can determine the topic from looking at the title and skimming through the reading. Ask yourself questions about the text before you read. Look for clues in the introduction to see if the author has stated their thesis or claim. Look for main ideas in body paragraphs, particularly the first and last sentences, which might give you a clue as to then the overall thesis or claim of the article. Look for main ideas in the conclusion to see if the article has included a claim or has summarized their points. And hunt out implied main ideas and key points by looking for repeated phrases and transitions. Figure out how the author might feel about the examples, facts, or descriptions they used in the essay. And finally, put your main ideas together and write the claim in your own words before testing your understanding to see if you're correct. So I hope that this helped you to figure out the main ideas of a passage, even though they might not be stated directly. And if you're wondering how to write your own claim or thesis, I have a presentation on that too. And if you're not in my class, you can check out the YouTube station. Thanks, everybody.